Right, hello folks. Coming back with what's going to be a little update to my previous Order of Battle videos. Um, so I think, well, it'd be over a year ago. I think since I did the first video, and I've updated it once since then. So this is going to be like the third time updating this. Is also going to be the third time recording this video because I got disturbed the first time, and then second time recording it, my cat decided to go and take a crap within 5 minutes of recording. It absolutely stunk, and it threw me off. So here I am back again, trying for a third time to get this video done. So um, this is just going to provide a little update to some of the units that were responsible for defending the UK during the Second World War. Um, and over the past, couple of months doing my research, I've been able to add quite a few new units to this, and I thought it's about time I do a little update, just to show how diverse and how many units there were actually defending the UK during the Second World War. As always, the vast majority of people seem to think that the only unit responsible for defending the UK was the local defence volunteers, later the Home Guard, and in reality, this is not true in the slightest. I see this on an almost daily basis, where as soon as anything crops up, the role of the Home Guard is largely overstated or applied where they weren't given any form of defensive responsibility. Recent example of this was I think just a couple of days ago, I saw an article by the EDP which was about some bloke who was going to convert or wanted to convert a pillbox, an anti-tank gun pillbox, into a small house or something. His planning permission had been turned down on grounds of the structure was too important. And yeah, the article, uh, as always, had a photo of Dad's army and stated that this pillbox and others on this line of defences would have been most likely garrisoned by the home or operated by the Home Guard, and in reality it wasn't. This was pillbox on the Eastern Command Line near Wisbech, and I know for certain from the documentary records that the pillboxes in that area were the responsibility of the 52nd Infantry Division later. Oh no, sorry, earlier the 18th Infantry Division. The only role the Home Guard had in terms of the Eastern Command Line in this area of Norfolk was to erect and garrison roadblocks, and that was it. And that was only up until the point of being relieved by the regular and territorial army. So again, it was just a prime example of how the role of the Home Guard is largely overstated thanks to poor research and the Dad's Army effect. But unfortunately, this is something that's unlikely to change in the near future, but it's something I want to keep on chipping away at. So let's get into my updated order of battle. So initially, this has started off as just a list of the land forces, and over time, it's grown to incorporate Air Force, intelligence assets, and the Navy as well. So let's start at the top. The ones I've already covered before in the past, I am going to skip over. I've just seen that. General Poppy has come in, so she's probably going to want to go to the toilet as well. Um, so let's start. Hello, Pops. You're right, Dan. So in terms of military intelligence, right at the top, I've put military intelligence. So the various organisations that gathered intelligence were responsible for had played an active role in defending the country against invasion by gathering intelligence on enemy troop movements on the continent and also trying to preempt enemy invasion through intelligence sources. Next, we have the Royal Navy and Coastal Commands. So the Royal Navy, as you know, is a naval force that sails boats around and fires at things at sea. And they were key to providing an early warning of the invasion fleet and also attacking it out to sea as well. And then you've got Coastal Command, which was kind of like the RAF at the coast. They were responsible for patrolling out to sea, also attacking enemy shipping and the like. And again, they had a key role in providing an early warning for an attacking providing an early warning of an invasion fleet and also attacking that fleet out to sea as well. Also, as well, if you've been watching my previous videos on the invasion threat, and if you subscribe to my Patreon, a new aspect of the Royal Navy's defence was also submarine patrols adjacent to the most likely areas of invasion in the UK as well. So that's a new kind of little bit of information that came out through the research recently. Next, again, in terms of the air, defence of the air, we have RAF Bomber and Fighter Command. So Bomber Command and their various echelons were responsible for, and Fighter, was it Fire Command? I'm not sure. Anyway, they were responsible for gathering intelligence and wrecking the enemy coast and the continent to kind of get an idea of enemy troop movements, as well as the build up to the invading force and things like that, and also carrying out ground attack as well. So also, if the invading force had landed in the UK, they would have attacked them on the ground, and also Bomber Command as well. As we know from from the history of the time, were responsible for attacking build-ups of and concentrations of enemy shipping in ports as well, to try and destroy enemy landing craft, which is something that goes overlooked. Coming back to the Royal Artillery, so one of the most overlooked land forces is the Royal Artillery, so operating coastal batteries to put down fire onto incoming landing craft, as well as putting counter battery fire onto supporting battleships and enemy naval forces as well. Inland, you have your field batteries that were various batteries located slightly inland, which had the task of putting down emergency fire onto troops as they landed on the beaches, for example, and also inland. And I have added to this anti-tank batteries as well. So units of the Royal Artillery specialised in the anti-tank role, so operating 2-pounder anti-tank guns, 6-pounders, whatever. These were a key aspect of landscape defence in terms of operating anti-tank artillery, and something that often goes overlooked. So the anti-tank units as well are going to be something I'm going to be looking at in more detail later on. I've got a couple of war diaries I need to gather, but yeah, worth adding them on. And then coming on to the main infantry force, you've got your regular and territorial army, so responsible for everything from coastal and inland defence, as well as mobile reserves and the GHQ reserve. So as I've stated in many other videos, the infantry defences are often seen as purely static, when in reality there was a counter-attacking force established all the way from platoon all the way up to general headquarters level of the home force as well. So yeah, something that's massively overlooked is the fact that the defences weren't purely static. There were there were infantry units set aside to undertake this counter-attacking role, all the way from a local to a national level, and that's something that goes overlooked. So, new one to add in here, coming in at number 3 or whatever, is the armoured divisions. So there were various armoured units deployed in the UK, so armoured units, tanks, armoured fighting vehicles, the like, deployed across the UK, and this is something that goes overlooked. So obviously everyone knows about the picture following the fall of France, when many tanks and other armoured units had been left behind. But prior to the fall of France, there were armoured divisions and units deployed within the UK on active defence, and you also had as well a key element of the GHQ reserve was, I think, the 2nd Armoured Division. Don't quote me on that, I can't quite remember. But an example of armoured divisions deployed in the UK was the 1st Armoured Division, who were deployed under Northern Command in 1939 and 1940. And they were attached directly to Northern Command and would have provided this armoured kind of like attacking capability across Northern Command. And again, this is something that goes overlooked. Another new one are Royal Engineers. So, as with everything else, Royal Engineers on ground defence, land defence is chronically overlooked. So the Royal Engineer units by day were responsible, in particular your Royal Engineer Field Companies, were responsible for the construction of defences and coordinating the construction of defences, especially in terms of liaising with and coordinating local contractors, council building teams and things like that. So yeah, their key role was the construction of defences. Field park companies, on the other hand, were responsible for sourcing resources for construction, but were also pressed into this the role of construction as well. Both of these units would have played a key role in landscape defence if the invading force came. This is something that goes overlooked. For example, your Royal Engineer Field Companies, like I say, would have been deployed to defend given areas. Royal Engineer Field Companies are often also attached at command and corps level as well. So what you get is division troops, division corps and command. So you get division corps and command troops who are like set way to the rear, well inland, and again, they were there to defend specific areas inland. So it's often assumed that after a certain distance inland, there were no, regular territorial army units. It was all Home Guard responsible for defending inland. When in reality, you had these corps, division, and command troops. So an example of this is in Rutland and Leicestershire, for example, there were Royal Engineer Field Company units deployed inland to undertake a defensive role if the invading force came, and to cover these areas while you had your other troops deployed forward. Alongside this, you had Auxiliary Military Pioneer Corps, or simply put, your Pioneer Corps. These were troops responsible for minor engineering works, I think is how it's termed. So from the war diaries, from what I've seen so far, they were doing things like putting up barbed wire entanglements and digging slit trenches, for example. So relatively minor defensive works, but again, in the event of an invasion, they would have been responsible for defending given areas. I'm just going to quickly come back to the Royal Engineer Field Companies as well, just briefly, because I'd forgotten about this. So, demolition of bridges. This was a key part of the defence of the UK during the Second World War, and again today, this is something that is always attributed to the Home Guard, or if not always attributed to the Home Guard, mostly attributed to the Home Guard. In reality, it was the Royal Engineer Field Companies that were responsible for determining, doing the reconnaissance work to identify vulnerable bridges, preparing them for demolition, and also demolishing them when commanded to do so. Again, this is something that's always a role always given to the Home Guard, and in reality, it was nothing to do with them. I found no evidence so far to show that the Home Guard had any responsibility, especially in Norfolk and East Yorkshire and East Anglia, for the demolition of bridges in any capacity. It was the Royal Engineers doing that. Kind of downside to this is I've been looking at the various bridges rigged to blow on the command line and GHQ lines in East Anglia and Cambridge, and the magazines where the explosive was stored associated with this in one particular place, which I won't mention, have been recorded as Home Guard stores, and they aren't. They were nothing to do with the Home Guard. These are magazines, as the documentary record states, and it shows how prevalent this belief that the Home Guard were responsible for demolishing bridges is that the place where the explosives were stored for the demolition of bridges have been assigned this Home Guard store, when in reality they were nothing to do with the Home Guard. They were Royal Engineer explosive stores, or explosive magazines to be correct. Okay, searchlight battery crews. Now these do go massively overlooked in their role. So again, from the war diaries and the various other records, searchlight batteries played a key role in terms of localized defense. When you map coastal artillery, when you map searchlight batteries, you often see them deployed in a regular grid pattern, often consisting of various boxes. And then, in some places where these records have been copied, it's assumed that all the searchlight batteries all locations were in operation. The reality is they weren't. It was a grid pattern established, and the units would move between them. But that's an aside. Searchlight battery crews were given the responsibility of not only defending their searchlight battery itself using light machine guns and rifles, but also providing information on the landing of enemy airborne troops, and in some cases, they were also incorporated into local defence schemes as well. So an example of this has been my research into Thetford. Right, Pops. And this has brought it to my attention that there was a searchlight battery on the outskirts of the town. I can't remember the unit off the top of my head, but they were responsible for this role of defending their battery, but also as well, alongside this, taking an active role in the defence of the town as well, so fighting alongside the regular and territorial army company that was located in town as well. So they would have fought side by side with the infantry in defence of the town. And again, this is something that goes overlooked and needs to be researched more readily. In most cases as well, from what I've seen in East Yorkshire in comparison, the searchlight battery crews also had greater responsibility for landscape defence when compared to the Home Guard. The Home Guard were told to sit still and only attack if they were attacked themselves and report on enemy movements, while the searchlight battery crews had a degree of mobile capability. alongside the regular and territorial army as well, and this is something that needs to be promoted more often. Alongside this, you've also got anti-aircraft battery crews as well, so they often had a land defense role in terms of defending their battery, and I'm not going to say mobile defense because I haven't come across any information to corroborate that just yet, but again, anti-aircraft batteries had a similar role in terms of defending the battery and reporting on the drop-in of enemy troops. So Poppy has managed to move the curtain that I've got, and I've got a light shining across my face. Yeah, so that's also worth highlighting. Right, now this was a bit of an obscure one. This is the next one is something that's come out of my research in East Yorkshire, and I'm not sure how prevalent this was, but I've got confirmation for this from East Yorkshire, and it's something that's worth mentioning, is ambulance car companies. So I'm not 100% sure what these were, but in East Yorkshire at least, there were two ambulance car companies that were deployed on a role patrolling inland for keep an eye out for enemy paratroops, making sure that they were counted on the ground, which is quite odd. I've never come across this anywhere else, but it's worth an honourable mention. So yeah, there was two ambulance car companies deployed inland in East Yorkshire who were patrolling around, keeping an eye out for paratroops, and in the event of them encountering them, they would have been responsible for attacking those paratroopers as they landed, which is quite interesting. I've never seen this mentioned elsewhere, but it's something to be aware of and something I'll be keeping an eye out for in the future. Next big one. So if you follow me if you subscribe to my Patreon, which I recommend you do, the next units came out in terms of early defence of East Yorkshire and Northern Command in 1939 and 1940. And these are infantry training centres, officer cadet training units, Royal Artillery training regiments, signals training regiments. So these were, as the name suggests, places where infantry were being trained, so new recruits and all this stuff. In terms of East Yorkshire, and I've seen this in East Anglia as well, in Norfolk, where officer cadet training units and infantry training centres were incorporated into schemes of defence. In East Yorkshire, they were responsible for airfield defence, local coastal defence, and the defence of major ports in their area of responsibility. So again, this is something that's often ascribed to the Home Guard, when in reality it's not something they were generally doing, especially in 1939 and early 1940, when they didn't exist, because they didn't exist. But these units were responsible for this kind of like the responsibility of defence, which is often assigned to the Home Guard, and that's something that's worth keeping an eye out for, because these units would have had a very similar role, but were directly attached to the regular and territorial army units in a given area too, so their role is worth highlighting. Next one's a really big one. So home defence battalions, massively tragically overlooked. Again, similar role to what is ascribed to the Home Guard today, but in reality they were in line with regular and territorial army units. So home defence battalions were generally formed of I've found evidence in Norfolk for two kind of categories, which are kind of hinted at in my second unit there. But home defence battalions were territorial army units that were raised in 1939-1940, and they were purely for the defence of the UK. They were a territorial army unit, but they wouldn't be sent overseas for defence. They would defend the UK. In some cases, these consisted of older men. Yeah, Poppy's going to the toilet now. Older men, so 40s, 50s, for example. And then alongside these, an example I found of a similar unit is the Young Soldiers Battalion. So these were formed, I found these in East Anglia, and as the name suggests, these comprised of younger soldiers. So, obviously they'd have to be a fighting age, so 18 plus, but young soldiers battalions. In Norfolk as well, I've also found mention of, I think it's something along the lines of old soldiers battalions, but these were later incorporated into the home defence battalions as well. So again, responsible for local defence, responsible for defence of airfields, responsible for the defence of vulnerable points, focal points and nodal points, and again, tragically overlooked in light of this perception that the Home Guard were responsible for defending everything. Home defence battalions and their adjacent units need a lot more attention. I've recently just got Andy Chatterton's book as well, and thanks for the mention in that, Andy, and the credit. That's much appreciated. I think Andy says there was something like 27,000 soldiers that were made that became part of the home defence battalions. Again, something that needs to be looked at in more detail. RAF defence units, right? So again, the Home Guard are seen as defending airfields when in reality it's not something they were generally deployed to do. The only information I can find so far on Home Guard defending airfields relates to disused landing ground and things like that. So I haven't found anything else apart from Home Guard being incorporated into kind of wider perimeter defence schemes for airfields where Home Guard units were present. In reality, it was the responsibility of the regular and territorial army as well as, these RAF defence units. So specific bodies of troops responsible for defending RAF airfields, but it also wasn't just RAF airfields as well that they were defending. So information I found for relating to the defence of Bridlington in East Yorkshire has shown that various RAF units, so there's a training school in Bridlington, I think, or something like that, and also units associated with picking up downed pilots out to sea. RAF units were to take an active part in defence of Bridlington, so occupying and garrisoning roadblocks, defending roadblocks, and even occupying pillboxes. And the funny thing is, in terms of the defence of Bridlington, I found more evidence to show that the RAF used pillboxes than they have the Home Guard, which makes me laugh. But yeah, again, something to be aware of is the role of these RAF ground defence units for defending airfields and also other areas as well. Alongside this, you've got Royal Navy defence units as well. So similar to the RAF defence units, the Royal Navy had their own ground units, which would have been responsible for defending Royal Navy shore establishments and Royal Navy land-based infrastructure. Again, something that goes massively overlooked, but needs to be looked into. There's some really nice photos in the IWM collection showing sailors of a shore establishment taking up slit trenches and using Lewis machine gun to protect this slit trench. So again, something that's worth being aware of. And then we come on to the Home Guard. So local defence volunteers, Home Guard, that everyone knows about, responsible for local defence of their immediate area, towns, villages, associated roadblocks, vulnerable points, factories, things like that. In some cases intended to guide regular and territorial army units in their area of operations, but a lot more research needs to be done to actually identify their actual role in a given area, because their role was so wide and so varied that it changes in given areas, and in some areas they had next to no responsibility, in other areas had a relatively major responsibility. But the Home Guard, as I'm showing here, were just one component of the defence of the UK, and by no means, especially in 1940 and 41, by no means the primary force of defence. Worth mentioning as well are the auxiliary units and special duties sections. So your auxiliary units are your sneaky beaky units that will pop up behind the invading force, seek out supplies of ammunition and petrol, and also immobilise aircraft on captured airfields, for example. Key part of the defence of the UK in terms of disrupting enemy units behind the lines. And then you have your special duties section again. I like to think of the special duties section as potentially more important, or from my perspective at least, the auxiliary units. So your special duties sections would have been key to providing intelligence on the movements of enemy units had they made landfall and invaded, and providing and passing on information up the chain of command to the home forces as well. So allowing the defenders to preempt and focus their attention on where the enemy troops were moving. And I think the special duties section alongside the auxiliary units, I think their role is vitally important, and would have been vitally important in terms of the defence of the landscape, the defence of the land in terms of breaking down this intelligence picture. And then finally, the last line of defence, the actual last line of defence, not the Home Guard, were your general headquarters reserves, so responsible for national counter-attack. See my other videos for an overview of where these were located. But again, these were heavily equipped bodies of troops and armoured divisions and mobile troops tasked with providing this knockout blow to the invading force on land. Right, that's the end of this update. I didn't intend for this to go for nearly 25 minutes, but it has. Deal with it. So yeah, that's my updated order of battle. I'm sure in a couple of months' time I'll be updating this to include even more units, but yeah, hopefully this adds to get this picture of defence in terms of land units and various other units responsible for defence, and shows that it wasn't just the Home Guard defending various aspects of the UK. What I'll eventually do when I do my series on defensive strategy, I'll go into more detail in terms of which units were responsible for various things when, um, and how this responsibility changed. I'll do a series of videos in particular looking at the role of the Home Guard and how that changed based on primary sources as well. I think that's going to be a key one to do. But anyway, I hope that's been useful as always. Managed to get through this without getting interrupted too badly by cats going to the toilet and etc. Yeah, I'll get on with doing the next invasion threat video. That'll come out whenever. But as always, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for liking my videos. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you've seen, please do subscribe to my channel and tell your mates about it. In the meantime, I'll catch you all later. Cheers and goodbye.